The X-Men are extremely amazing, but even they can't escape failure. Magneto, the true definition of who are you, friend or foe? Magneto has humbled the X-Men many times, but Magneto Triumphant will be our first example today. I also like this one because it has to do with the time Magneto was turned into a baby. This story was released in the 1970s and the X-Men were fighting another bad guy actually, Mesmero. He had the team mesmerized, so incapacitated. By the time they break out of that, Magneto is on the scene and has already defeated Mesmero. He did it to capture the X-Men himself and lock them in chairs and then turn them into babies. Magneto is one of the most powerful mutants out there, so that's common knowledge, but still having the X-Men team up coming for you, it's a lot to deal with. The reason he managed to win, the X-Men decided to fight him one-on-one. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. There was a lesson in here. The one-on-one thing obviously didn't work. Once trapped, Magneto leaves the team to a robot and he goes out and causes chaos. Rookie mistake, finish your battles yourself, because Storm frees the team and they showed they learned from their mistakes, fighting Magneto as a team and defeating the powerful mutant. Xorn technically sublimes infiltration of the X-Men school and then resulting destruction has to be a sore spot for the super family. Xorn was originally introduced to be Magneto in a disguise. He wasn't real. The story ended with Magneto dying, but Xorn was such a loved character and Marvel needed Magneto alive again, so they decided to retcon this. Xorn was real and had a twin, and Xorn was just pretending to be Magneto, pretending to be Xorn. He did all that chaotic stuff because he was under Sublime's mind control. The intention was to make mutants appear dangerous and unstable, so when it came time to convince humans to side against mutants, it would just be easier. Xorn was a trusted friend to the X-Men. He was a teacher at the school and worked very closely with young, traumatized teens. That's not a position you give to just anyone. In all fairness, when Xorn started teaching, he was Xorn. He was possessed while at the school. Still, it must have been a little paper cut sting when the X-Men found out their school was infiltrated. Throwing a bucket of lemon juice on that paper cut, Xornito went wild, destroying the city and ending Jean Grey. Wolverine took care of him, but the damage was already done. Mojo once roasted Wolverine in front of trillions. X-Men the animated series is the gift that keeps on giving. In episode 11 of season 2, the X-Men are up against Mojo. Mojo is from a world addicted to TV. Whoever creates the most interesting TV rules the world. Who would be better for a reality show than the X-Men? They even have a dramatic love triangle, and Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean are exactly what led to this humbling. The X-Men are placed in parodies of popular TV shows like Miami Vice and Star Trek, becoming Miami Mutants and Rogue Star. The third show is a parody of the 60s sitcom I Dream of Jeannie. This one is changed to I Dream of Jean, poking fun at the famous love triangle. Fans recall this episode as being fun and over the top. The title card for the fake series looks scandalous, but Jean is wearing a peach-colored suit, so it looks bad, but it isn't. As for someone that was actually roasted for not wearing many clothes, Horticulture beat up the X-Men with their wit and their fists. Horticulture is a group of women that believe the Earth was at its purest when it wasn't so populated. Their goal then is to depopulate the Earth. They use their biology and other scientific skills to modify anything botanical. The old women go to Krakoa because of its exotic plant life. In their words, they love the S word out of flowers. Horticulture starts spraying mutants with this green stuff that just stops movement. Cyclops, Emma Frost, and Sebastian Shaw, they find them to take care of business, only they get way more than they bargained for. The old women came to play and they came to slay. Before a punch is even thrown, they roast Frost's clothing, or lack thereof, establish they have taken care of their cheating husbands, and just generally prove they are going to be harder to take down than anticipated. One of the old ladies gets thrown to the ground and Cyclops is very concerned for her well-being, only she faked hurting her hip. It was a lie, and she gets Cyclops with the green stuff, screaming, "Stupid boy, we do water aerobics and yoga 4 days a week at the YMCA." The X-Men got the equivalent of getting beat up with a handbag. Grotesque literally took out one of the most important figures to the X-Men, Professor X. If that doesn't count as humbling, I don't know what does. So Grotesque basically lives kind of like under the surface world, and his world was totally destroyed. He guessed that the cause came from up here, and he guessed correctly. It was a machine that caused it here on the surface world, and it affected the underworld. He came to the surface to avenge his people. During the final big battle between Grotesque Grotesque and the X-Men, the machine, it blows up and it happens to take out Professor X, but psych, it turns out that was never Professor X. For the past little while, Professor X was actually Changeling. The real professor was off preparing for a battle he didn't want the X-Men to know about yet. Changeling was a shapeshifter that was going to pass soon and wanted to end his life on a good guy note. Still, the X-Men didn't know all of that at the time. Even if some of them did, they still had to watch the physical body of the professor roll over. Grotesque went on to cause a variety of problems throughout his life. He is a hard villain to get rid of. Magneto again, this time for ripping the adamantium off Wolverine's skeleton, because what the heck was that? Marvel Leave Wolverine Alone challenge, level impossible. This famous Magneto the Ripper moment happened in X-Men 25. It was the 90s. Wolverine has almost never been hurt so bad before. His healing factor didn't know what to do. Jean had to hold his body together here telepathically just to keep Wolverine clinging onto his life. This is probably the closest time Wolverine has ever come to actually laying to rest, but he is Wolverine, so Marvel can't do that. It took a very long time for Logan to heal, and after he went a little bit feral, we learned about the bone claws though. He lost his nose, he wore a bandana, can't judge him for any of that. Getting humbled that bad makes you do funny things. Do we love Jean Grey? Of course, that's Mother right there. Do we love Dark Phoenix? Maybe, in a different way. Interesting character, but please stop being so mean. The Dark Phoenix first appearing caused literally so many problems for the X-Men. It was like they had a punch card for defeats, like lose 9 times, you get the 10th as a win. This was a real moment for Jean Grey fans. She was active at this time. She was devouring stars and destroying entire civilizations and taking the X-Men out of course. Now the thing is, was it Grey doing all these horrible things? Not really. The Dark Phoenix is its own thing. Grey is just one of the only people that can act as an appropriate host for it. So the Dark Phoenix is the one responsible for all the bad things that have happened, but wore Jean like a cover, roping her into all this damage even though she didn't want to do it. Jean Grey further proves she didn't want to do it when she sacrifices herself to save the day. Scarlet Witch is not always a villain, but she has done some truly evil things to make her a slightly gray area. Scarlet Witch destroyed the X-Men when she caused M-Day. She didn't just humble the team, she all but eliminated the entire gene pool. Her famous line, "No more mutants," caused one of the most devastating losses the mutant community has ever seen. They not only lost the fight, they also lost their powers, and many mutants lost their lives. There were only a few survivors from M-Day. It took a long time to figure out how to regain lives and powers. Even when they figured it all out, the solution wasn't perfect, and many mutants did not return. If it makes you feel any better, there were repercussions for Wanda. She lost almost everyone's trust and is now mildly feared, only mildly because she did help bring everybody back that she could, which was the least she could do, in my opinion. Mutant Mass wasn't the X-Men's day, week, month, or even their year. You can probably guess the vibes were going to be bad. Not only did many people pass, dozens more were left seriously injured. One mutant even lost one of the most important pieces of his body. Angel lost his wings. He'd had them so long that learning to live without them was tough. Him losing his wings during this tragic event also led to him becoming a horseman for Apocalypse, Angel of Death. In literature, which Marvel is, the loss of angel wings usually means the character is experiencing a fall from grace. Can't think of a bigger fall than becoming a horseman for Apocalypse. If that hadn't happened though, Angel wouldn't have had new cool powers, so it's kind of like we feel bad, but we're kind of glad he at least got something out of it all. X-Men Days of Future Past was a nightmare. Everybody had something bad happen to them. It's set in a future dystopian world. Mutants are placed in evil camp situations as there is a lot of mutant fear in the general public. The Sentinels run everything, and they are mutant hunting robots. This comic arc was released in the 80s, so the future dystopian world was actually 2013. The few X-Men that are not captured are at Plan Z when it comes to fixing this problem. So their last effort is to send Kitty Pryde's mind back in time, intending for it to possess herself in the past so she can warn the X-Men about the future so they can prevent the damage from happening. Well, the reason things took a turn for the worst for the X-Men was an important politician getting taken out by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, so they have to stop that. They also have to prevent the deaths of Professor X and Moira McTaggart. They do, of course, but even though they win, it's not actually clear if the future from 2013 was totally stopped or just delayed. It's almost a decade after it was supposed to happen, so hopefully they're good.
Number 10. Bishop. When Bishop shows up on the scene, he is quick to single out Gambit, who he believes to be the man he knows as the Witness in his future. He believes this is why the Witness will not speak or show anything regarding the mutant Gambit, because he is the mutant Gambit, and Bishop thinks he is the one who betrays the X-Men in the future. However, everyone else in the X-Men is very offended by this implication, and Jean wonders if, despite all the drama, they can just still go on their planned picnic. In gloriously 90s fashion, despite Bishop's appearance, they actually do go on a picnic. It is here that Bishop confronts Gambit while he is on a picnic with Rogue specifically. Although Gambit is not down for the count, Bishop does slug him so hard that he goes flying into Rogue. The whole interaction is honestly like comedy gold. It is peak 90s, but one does feel pretty bad for Gambit in all of this. I mean, I always feel bad for Gambit. People always coming in and being like, Gambit, you're trash, you're terrible. And I'm like, you don't even know. Like, just give him a second, let him breathe. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when we talk mutants, I know I love it, be sure to check out our X-Men playlist for even more mutant content. Number 9, himself. Gambit actually humbled himself intentionally in the comics. If you've ever seen Gambit doing his thing and thought he has the potential to be even more powerful, you would actually be right. Gambit in fact has the potential to be a dangerous level of powerful with his abilities, which is why he actually asked Mr. Sinister to literally nerf him by messing with his brain. Gambit had Mr. Sinister intentionally dampen his powers so that he wouldn't hurt anyone, and in return, for a while, Gambit was indebted to Mr. Sinister and therefore forced to do his dirty work. Number 8, Iceman. It's blue versus gold in this issue, and as a result, Gambit ends up face to face with Bobby Drake's Iceman. While he may have been able to dodge every shot Forge could target him with, and even parry some of those shots back at Forge, when it comes to Iceman, Gambit is quickly and handily defeated as he is knocked out with a solid block of ice. He did not see that one coming, which hits him square on the jaw. Number 7, Black Panther. What a terrible time for Gambit's powers to go on the fritz, oh boy. Right when he's in the middle of a fight with Black Panther. Yet, that's just what happened in Gambit and Rogue's most recent team-up series, Rogue and Gambit Volume 2 from 2023. Here, Gambit and Rogue are accused of kidnapping fellow mutant and friend to T'Challa, Manifold, at the behest of Destiny, who had a vision about how Manifold could basically be the key to saving all of mutant kind. Black Panther doesn't really blame Rogue though here, he actually blames Gambit for corrupting his wife, seeing him as no more than a common low-level thief. See what I'm saying? Gambit just can't catch a break, man. Black Panther pounces at Gambit, and while Gambit manages to get in at least a single hit, his powers then decide to just stop working, which is something Rogue and Gambit have both been dealing with in the desert, power loss in that series. And so Rogue steps in to save the day while Gambit creates a distraction so they can just simply escape T'Challa instead of fight him, because they know if they fought him, probably not gonna win, especially if they don't have powers. Number 6, Joelle. Is Joelle really a superhero? Well, she's a superpowered person, and while she is also a thief, I don't think her motives are necessarily bad here at all, so I'm gonna count her, okay? I just like Joelle. She's fun, she's quippy, she's sassy. I like her. And she isn't focused on hurting anyone, really. Actually, Joelle actively shows that she wants to make sure that no one else gets hurt because of her, which seems pretty heroic. Joelle was the woman that Remy met up with in his own series, Gambit, volume number 5, out of 2012. Throughout the series, Joelle is constantly putting him in his place. While she claims she needs his help to get a cure for her daughter, what she really wants is something that will end her life. Her power is eternal, and she no longer wants to continue on after suffering too much loss. Personally, I love how much she schools and teases Gambit throughout the series, and I am really sad that she was such a short-lived character, because she was pretty cool. Number 5, Wolverine. We're talking about The Lost Trail, and at least there is cover art for this podcast though, so we can show that. That's one image we have. The Lost Trail is a follow-up story to the previous Wolverine podcast, The Long Night. While in Long Night, Wolverine is mainly a mysterious figure for much of the story, who is a suspect in some trouble that happened up in Alaska. In Lost Trail, he is very much one of the main characters as he ventures down to Louisiana and the Bayou to find his missing past love, Maureen, while also helping a teenage kid, Marcus Baptiste, look for his ma, who, along with their mutant-based community, also went mysteriously missing. During his time in Louisiana, he runs into his former colleague Gambit, and also at one point is forced to fight Gambit. Gambit at the time was being brainwashed by Mastermind, FYI. Wolverine successfully schools him, breaking his bow staff and knocking him out with, well, a single punch. Poor Gambit, everyone is always breaking his bow staff. That just happens a lot. He must have an endless supply of bow staffs. Number 4, Rogue. During the Rogue and Gambit miniseries, Rogue humbles Gambit in a different sort of way. In regards to his smooching abilities. Ugh, Rogue, hitting him where it hurts. Rogue really knows how to take Gambit down a notch. Ugh. I think this went down in their team up miniseries, Rogue and Gambit. Not the most recent one, the one that happened before that, because there's been a couple of those. Gambit confronts Rogue about hearing that she had kissed Deadpool, sharing that news spreads fast among the X-Men gossip grapevine. Rogue attests that she personally knows that, as she has received many concerning calls regarding Remy's behavior over the years. She then goes on to suggest that Deadpool, due to his lack of face, may actually even be a better kisser, because he tries harder than Remy does, implying that Remy skates by on good looks as opposed to skill in the romance department. Boom. Mic drop. Number 3. Emma Frost. Emma Frost definitely put Gambit in his place when he and Rogue were having some romance issues. Gambit and Rogue had been depowered together, but when their powers returned, they kinda struggled to return to a life of, well, pure celibacy. They reached out to Emma Frost for help, who consulted with them and attempted to find a safe space where they could come together telepathically, so not physically in the real world, but kind of physically in their minds. Through her therapy, they were able to be in the same space and touch without danger, except for the fact that their own fears around intimacy and the status of their relationship actually did keep them apart, acting like blocks in their mind. Initially, Rogue almost killed Gambit in the telepathic state, and another time he imagined Rogue as one of his students, who was actively attempting to pursue him. This prompted Remy to freak out, and Emma slapped him back to reality. When Rogue picked up on Gambit's feelings, she called him out on his baggage, with him retorting that if he was with his student Fox, who was really Mystique in disguise, unbeknownst to them both, to make it a little less creepy, but still it's pretty creepy, he wouldn't have to deal with telepathic therapy. So there, Rogue, putting the blame back on her. And after Rogue, of course, stormed off, Emma was there to call out Gambit for making this way worse with his response to Rogue's comment. Emma truly seemed frustrated with both of them, to be honest, although perhaps more so with Gambit. And I mean, Gambit was the one that she slapped in that issue, so. Number 2. Captain America. To be honest, Gambit actually gave Cap a pretty good run for his money here, but it sadly was not good enough. In Avengers vs. X-Men issue number 2, we're starting off with a fight between the X-Men's Gambit and the Avengers' Captain America, Steve Rogers. Why are these two fighting? Well, because of a larger issue at hand. Avengers vs. X-Men was really all about a conflict surrounding the Phoenix Force. Basically, the Avengers felt like the Phoenix Force was unsafe and should be fought and like destroyed, whereas the X-Men were more open to the idea of using the Force, as they thought it would actually help in bringing back the mutant species that had been drastically reduced in number following the events of M-Day. First, it seems as though Gambit has the upper hand in this fight, with him even going so far as to charge Cap's armor and blow it up, thinking that'll end the fight. But Captain America is apparently tougher than Gambit estimated. He not only survives the explosion, but manages to then knock Gambit out with one punch. Another fight where Gambit's bow staff is tragically destroyed. Rest in peace, Gambit's bow staff. Always destroyed. Number 1. Gambit. I know what you're thinking. Am I putting Gambit on this list twice? Well, sort of. Gambit literally humbled himself in the one case, but in this case, Gambit humbled not necessarily himself as Gambit, but New Sun, who is an alternate version of Gambit entirely. This version of Gambit never had the inhibiting surgery performed on him, and so he was powerful enough to essentially destroy worlds. His powers had grown to the point that he didn't even need to see an object to charge it with energy. New Sun was powerful enough to take on other superpowered beings like the Phoenix and beat them. In fact, New Sun had not only destroyed the Phoenix, but as I said, destroyed his own entire world that he came from. Gambit, because of this, was forced to unlock the full potential of his power once more to take on New Sun. And guess what? It worked! His sense of creativity was actually more attuned and heightened than New Sun's was, and he was able as such to defeat his alternate self. However, in the process, he essentially burned out his powers, overcharging himself. So that's why instead of being Omega level today, he's still considered to be, well, just Alpha. Once more nerfing himself. Although this time not necessarily intentionally, but just doing so in order to save the day. And also, who knows, he might become Omega again one day. The X-Men are generally thought of as one of Marvel's greatest superhero teams, but even they struggle sometimes in conflicts with other supes. When it comes to the Hulk, there was a time where he ended up humbling the X-Men. Now, this was during World War Hulk. Hulk blamed a group of people for sending him to space, known as the Illuminati. The Illuminati are their own secret group, made up of a bunch of guys who basically consider themselves to be among the elite when it comes to the smartest people on Earth. Not every genius hero has joined them though. In fact, some who were offered a place originally on the team were wise enough to decline that offer. Now when I say wise, I kind of mean it, as this is the team who ultimately did decide to send Hulk to space because he was considered too much of a danger on Earth. Hulk is sent away but returns to Earth for revenge due to the spaceship that he landed in exploding, destroying the new place that he had come to call his home. You may recognize its name, Sakaar. One person who he blames is an Illuminati member, Charles Xavier, though Charles was not actually at the meeting when it was decided to send Hulk away. When Hulk comes a calling on the X-Men, he manages to beat them pretty badly. Fortunately, they are able to kind of shame him with some words into just like stopping his rampage here. Still safe to say that the X-Men would struggle in a fight against someone as powerful as the Hulk. If you had to say anyone that you feel like would struggle in a fight against the Hulk, who do you think that would be? If the Hulk can take on, you know, most of the X-Men. Pretty impressive. Spider-Man is a hero who ended up besting the X-Men when two of them were possessed by the Phoenix Force. Yep, you heard that right, the Phoenix Force. How did he do it? Well, actually not with his fists, but with his wits. Spider-Man was actually just squaring off with them to give the Avengers some time to retreat, but he managed to do one better after he manipulated Magic and Colossus, sister and brother, into turning on one another. Tony at least has tried to humble the X-Men. Now, he wasn't as successful as some others that are on our list, but he did try to do so by comparing kind of hands with them. Not a great move on his part, to be honest. This all went down during the first Civil War when he had a chat with Emma Frost, one of his ex-flames, to be honest. He attempted to compare the Avengers to the X-Men, saying that they also had to deal with prejudice too. However, while he did attempt to humble Emma into backing down, this ultimately backfired, causing her to remind him of just how much hate and prejudice mutants had to deal with, including, you know, things like the catastrophic events that happened on Genosha. Don't think the Avengers have ever had that level of hate thrown against them, you know what I mean? While the covers for the Fantastic Four versus the X-Men comic from the 80s would leave you believing that the FF were the ones who were very much bested here, in the end they were actually the ones who kind of got the last laugh, with the little Franklin Richards joining forces with Lockheed and actually flying in and pretty much shaming everyone in the end with the state of Kitty Pryde, who was actually not doing so well at this time, and I believe it's kind of at the center of this conflict. I just love Franklin flying in and basically being like, are you guys really fighting right now? Like, Kitty is maybe about to die. Like, hello? Just a little, of course a little kid would just come in and be like, hey, everyone, let's just chill out. In this turn of events, Cyclops played right into Wade Wilson's hands. This was when Deadpool was given temporary membership to the X-Men. It turns out though that they had basically only offered Deadpool a place on the team, a temporary place on the team, because they wanted to keep a close eye on him, because yeah, they didn't trust him. While hurt by this revelation, Deadpool still did his best to play his part as an X-Men, regardless of whether or not his membership was considered to be real, by helping the mutants out. He even took the fall for them to help save their public image, and then in the end antagonized Psych so that he'd fight an unmasked Deadpool while Wade was wearing his own unofficial X-Men costume. Once again to help them with PR. In the end, while he didn't want to, Cyclops was forced to admit that indeed Deadpool did have moves. The Inhumans gave the mutants a run for their money sort of accidentally during IVX, Inhumans vs X-Men. During this event, the Inhumans didn't really intend to hurt the X-Men, it was more of just a thing that like kinda happened here. This happened when the Inhumans' Terrigen clouds were released into Earth's atmosphere. They didn't know at the time, but it turned out that the Terrigen mists were actually really poisonous to mutants, even fatal. Cyclops early on actually died as a result of exposure, but Emma Frost, seeking to get revenge on the Inhumans, decided to make it seem as though Black Bolt had actually killed Cyclops during what could have ended up being peace talks had Emma not, you know, been manipulating this whole scenario. Instead, communication broke down and it ended up being an all-out war between the two sides, although eventually the mutants would realize that Emma had basically manipulated them into fighting this war against the Inhumans, and the X-Men and Inhumans would ultimately kind of team up to take down Emma. Black Panther managed to humble, or at least shame, one X-Men during the Ten of Swords event in the lead up to the Otherworld tournament. In the lead up to the tournament, both Arakko and Krakoa were basically given a list of champions, and each champion had a specific blade, a specific sword, you know, Ten of Swords, they had to recover to be able to enter this tournament. Storm's blade was located in Wakanda and was basically tied to the heritage and the lore of the people and the land. Storm went to Wakanda and asked for this blade, which was a super important item to them, but was told she would basically have to wait until Black Panther had returned because he was kind of the one that had to make that call. However, worrying that the delay would basically mean that she would miss the deadline to enter and possibly not confident in maybe what Black Panther's answer would be, considering they have a romantic history, but it's also gone really bad before in the past. Storm instead decided to put her thief hat back on and just steal the weapon. Right after she'd acquired it and was kinda on her way out the door, Black Panther arrived back at the palace and basically confronted her. Not taking the blade back, but basically condemning her for choosing to steal it in the first place and for her lack of faith in both him and in Wakanda. I love how the X-Men are constantly working to humble each other, like when Emma Frost decided to call Professor X out for how he treated and kinda manipulated Scott Summers over the years. She put a plant sort of in his mind and managed in essence to take control of his psyche to kinda torment him, but also to make him see why Scott basically didn't need him anymore, and how he'd actually done a lot of harm to Cyclops over the years. This all went down in X-Men Legacy issue number 216, and also stood to show just how powerful of a telepath Emma Frost truly is. During Executioner's song, a whole X-Men team ended up being taken out by, get this, Wolverine. See what I'm saying? X-Men fighting X-Men. What's going on? Granted, it wasn't the X-Men team, but it was an X-Men adjacent team, so I think we can count it. After taking out Shatterstar, the X-Force team would also be tracked down by Wolverine and taken out primarily by him and by Psylocke, forced to surrender to the Blue X-Men and X-Factor teams respectively, and they were backed into a corner fairly easily, honestly, with Wolverine choosing to hunt them down and citing it as one of the things he is best known for, which honestly, true. Although I imagine X-Force, like the other teams here, also felt pretty conflicted about fighting against their friends. So this, combined with Wolverine's ruthlessness, probably helped to convince them to, maybe just surrender. You've probably heard of a little well-known event called Avengers vs. X-Men. This event stood to highlight some of the feuds, some of the tension between these two teams and their individual members that had been brewing for, honestly, years. Chiefly though, the fight was over the Phoenix Force. The Phoenix was returning to bond with, as the mutants believe, its current ideal host, Hope Summers. At least that was their working theory. They didn't know for sure. The Avengers, because they didn't know for sure what was going on with this, wanted it gone. They felt it was too dangerous, the two fought, which now seems ironic since although the Phoenix has long been linked to mutants and of course mutant-based stories, and the Avengers were very anti-Phoenix at this time, the Avengers also recently had the Phoenix as a member on their team when the Phoenix Force was merged with Echo, aka Maya Lopez. So it's pretty funny in retrospect when we think about that.
Number 10. Thor. Look, Wolverine may be a pretty quick to anger guy, he may go feral once in a while, but he is not an idiot. The problem is he seems to be rather prone to being mind controlled, brainwashed, and otherwise turned on his allies. One of those allies who quickly helped Wolverine back to his senses was Thor. Wolverine stands not even a slight passing hope of facing off against Thor and being able to come out on top, and yet in 2009 we still got the Wolverine vs. Thor comic book. Essentially, Loki using his magic made Wolverine believe that Thor was actually his nemesis, Sabretooth. Wolvie did actually put a few licks in on Thor, having a greater amount of speed than the God of Thunder, but Thor has got strength, durability, a massive unbeatable hammer, Asgardian physiology, control over lightning, oh he can fly, and did I say he has a massive unbeatable hammer? Oh yeah, and he's a god. So, after he gets fed up with Wolverine's mad ramblings, he swats Wolverine down to the ground, flies up in the air, and calls down a massive lightning bolt that puts Wolverine down and knocks him back to his senses. Number 9. Black Panther. In the aptly named Killable story arc, Wolverine deals with his own mortality as his healing factor is taken away from him. The force that got rid of Logan's power was also having a mind-controlling effect on other heroes, and the source looked to be pointing toward the home of Black Panther, aka Wakanda. Upon meeting Black Panther in Wakanda, he assumed the hero was under the control of the said virus, which was a dumb assumption to make, but superheroes have to fight each other, them's the rules. The thing about Wolverine is, his entire fighting style is based on the fact that he can take untold amounts of damage. He can be as reckless as he wants because he isn't really in much danger. But, as T'Challa points out, that is not the case here. After slapping around Wolverine with some relative ease, he convinces Logan that he is indeed not mind controlled and that Wolverine is being the big old dumb because he is. Number 8. Storm. Storm is the kind of mutant who not only has the raw power to beat Wolverine, but in the story story we are talking about today, she was able to reduce him down to a charred skeleton, completely taking his life. This is the extremely short-lived X-Men Forever. The series kicked off in an exciting fashion by having Logan wiped out with his remains being discovered in Central Park, and the heroes having a bit of a mystery as to who did it. While everyone assumes it was Sabretooth somehow, the culprit is soon revealed itself to be a now evil Storm, who completely wiped Wolverine's skin and flesh from his bones when he discovered her evil ways. Unfortunately though, fans wouldn't ever get the chance to learn why this happened properly, since the series was cut short before the answers were actually revealed. Number 7. Molly Hayes. I feel like I don't talk about the Runaways enough, and that's a shame because these heroes are a huge hit for Marvel because they rock. Case in point would be Molly Hayes. Molly here is a huge fan of Wolverine's growing up. She was, until she got to meet him. Sometimes Wolverine's angry, savage approach doesn't really work for everyone, and when you come running up yelling and growling at a super strong 10-year-old who just wants to tell you how much of a fan she is of yours, popping her claws and being all weirdly drawn and stuff, yeah, it ain't gonna go well, which Wolverine learned the hard way. After asking Miss Hayes to stop screaming on account of his super sensitive hearing, Wolverine ends up being sock-and-bopped 20 yards out of a church and face first into a snowbank. It's very embarrassing. Number 6. Wasp. This isn't just Wasp humbling Wolverine. This is Wasp humbling the entire X-Men team. During the original Secret Wars in 1985, the Wasp has been shacking up with Magneto. Now, before you get the wrong idea, this is all a ruse so she can figure out what the Master of Magnetism is up to. When he finally reveals it to the X-Men in issue number 7, Wasp immediately turns on Magneto and attacks. Now, with the X-Men wishing to stop her from doing harm to Magneto because they need him, they jump in to defend him. Wasp immediately jumps in to attack them back, and she leads this fight with a big old kick straight to Wolverine's hairy little face. She then bounces off him and lands solid hits on every single one of the X-Men before zipping out of there like a wet fart. Number 5. Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is a hero who for a long time was very underutilized and very underappreciated, and that all changed with Brian Michael Bendis and with the New Avengers. In the 2005 New Avengers, this group of heroes find themselves in the Savage Land on the trail of the psychic vampire Sauron, and they just happen to fall upon Wolverine. Well, what actually happened is that Luke Cage and Jessica were in the jungle and Wolverine kind of snuck up on Spider-Woman because, quote, he was being tracked and he didn't recognize their scents. Which, it's a silly reason, but it was also a silly thing to even do because Jessica immediately grabs Wolverine by the wrist, flips him on his back, and then turns his own claws on him, plunging them straight through his own neck. It's hella impressive, even if this was actually a Skrull version of her at the time. Number 4. Squirrel Girl. Nobody beats Squirrel Girl. Dr. Doom, Thanos, Fin Fang Foom, Ego the Living Planet, even Galactus, they have all fallen to her might. So, what good is Wolverine gonna do? None whatsoever. Now, this was during a little sparring sesh that took place in New Avengers 2010, issue number 15, after Wolverine somehow beat Iron Fist in hand-to-hand combat. Iron Fist said he was fighting at a 3 at this time, but it's still pitiful. Wolverine calls up his next sparring partner, Squirrel Girl. After absolutely overwhelming Logan with a flurry of kicks and punches, knocking him on his keister, Doreen felt fully confident to turn around and gloat a little. This gave Wolverine the opportunity to get her in an arm hold, telling her to never turn her back in a fight. To which she replies, I know, and that's because Wolverine is literally surrounded by an army of maybe like 70 squirrels, all poised to attack him, which forces his surrender to the all-powerful Squirrel Girl. Number 3. Beast. Again, Beast is strong, he's fast, and he's acrobatic, but Logan has those traits as well, plus quite a few others, which is why in a normal straight-up hand-to-hand fight, you'd have to give this one to Logan. Unless Beast has got some plans in place or can otherwise use his great mind, he isn't likely to come out on top against Wolverine. Unless he's got some help. In the Here Comes Tomorrow storyline, Beast is taken over by an entity known as Sublime, who further enhanced Beast and himself by channeling the power of the Phoenix Force. All that power turned this evil version of Beast into a threat to everybody. Now Logan stepped up to take Beast on, but Sublime's powers completely negated Wolverine's healing factor and left him vulnerable. Sublime Beast seized the advantage and tore through Logan, leaving him without being able to regenerate. But of course, this was all canceled out later by Jean Grey with some good old time travel. It was definitely a very violent and sticky end for Logan though, just saying. Number 2, Cyclops. The rivalry between Wolverine and Cyclops is well documented. There have been entire story arcs to do with their inability to get along. Ever since Wolverine came along, Cyclops just hasn't been as cool as he used to be, and that's gotta sting. While the argument of who can beat who comes up a lot, I think we all just have to look at the facts and understand that when it comes to pure power, Cyclops has the win 9 times out of 10. The guy's optic blasts have been shown to destroy entire mountains, let alone 5'3" angry Canadians. While there have been plenty of times where Cyclops has blasted the skin off Wolverine and put him down, I think the most embarrassing of these defeats comes in 1963's Uncanny X-Men issue 115. Here, the X-Men have made their way to the Savage Land, and thanks to Sauron, Wolverine gets put under some mind control. Now, Cyclops, seeing the danger this Wolverine poses, of course, has to end the threat, and he does so very quickly, blasting Wolverine right in the face, flipping him over mid-jump and landing him face first in a pool of water. Now when Wolverine recovers for the second attack, Cyclops is not pulling any punches and simply fires a blast that sends Wolverine flying a good couple of 100 meters away. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Magneto. Now, classic comic book fans all know that Magneto is not a hero. Over the years, he has begun to twist to become a hero though, and through that tiny little technicality, I'm going to talk about the time that Magneto completely annihilated Wolverine and reduced his entire character to a whole different level than almost anyone else ever did before. In the 1993 crossover event Fatal Attractions, Magneto was offering mutants sanctuary on his ship, the Avalon, and recovering from the legacy virus, he was planning to completely wipe out humanity, being opposed by the X-Men. Now Xavier, in a special Shi'ar suit, leads the fight against Magneto on Avalon. Magneto holds off everyone until Wolverine gets the drop on him. Now Wolverine makes it so close, slicing him across the chest just a little too close for comfort. This pushes Magneto over the edge. He turns the adamantium on Wolverine's skeleton into liquid and quite literally pulls it out of his body. This got Magneto brought down quick. It led to the rise of Onslaught, revealed that Wolverine's claws are actually bone underneath, and turned Wolverine into a completely feral version of himself. Number 10, the Punisher. In the early 2000s, Punisher faced off with Wolverine in Punisher number 16 and 17. Essentially, the Punisher found himself in the crosshairs of Logan, and he needed to buy himself some time without Wolverine getting in his way. To do this, Punisher blows off Wolverine's face with a bit of buckshot in Punisher number 16. Now, thanks to his healing factor, Logan is still standing with his face already starting to heal over his exposed adamantium skull. So obviously that didn't buy the Punisher much time at all. Instead, in Punisher number 17, Frank Castle makes things just a little bit more below the belt. Literally, as he wiped Wolverine's gonads off of the playing field in a similar way to how he took off Wolverine's face. But of course, even this won't stop the mutant, so Frank Castle resorts to even more drastic measures. Needing the means to give himself a day or two at least before Logan will start coming after him again, the Punisher uses a steamroller to slowly but completely flatten Logan, and then he parks it there and walks off to do his business. If anything, I think this is kind of a testament to how powerful Wolverine actually is, but still, it happened. It was cool. Number 9, Spider-Man. It should be obvious, but you don't dare insult Mary Jane to Peter's face. In Amazing Spider-Man issue number 522, Peter is awoken with a call about a newspaper article claiming that Mary Jane had a little, entanglement, we shall say, with Tony Stark. Now obviously this is not true, and actually it was a setup by a villain, but that's not the point right now. Peter gets out of his bed in Stark Tower and goes looking for his wife. Along the way, he runs into Wolverine in a room with a very lovely high-up view of the city. Now, Logan decides to start going on about how Mary Jane messed up big time, and after a warning from Peter to stop, he decided to comment on her lack of brains. This lovely little comment gets him thrown through unbreakable glass and a really colorful way to catch a cab. Number 8, the Hulk. The first rivalry Wolverine ever had in comic book history is with the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk is basically just a ball of increasingly strong muscle, and he just gets more and more strong the longer the fight goes on, and the more mad he gets. He can dish out basically untold amounts of damage. As for Wolverine, he can take untold amounts of damage, almost always coming back thanks to his incredible healing factor. chapter. Their rivalry began with the Incredible Hulk number 181 when Wolverine was first ever introduced, coming in between the Hulk and the Wendigo. Then in the Incredible Hulk number 340, Wolverine takes on the Grey Hulk, going into a berserker rage, ripping into the Hulk like never before. It is awesome to see, that is, until the Hulk heals and makes Wolverine one with the ground. The worst time Hulk defeated Wolverine though would have to be in a different universe, specifically the Ultimate Universe. Here, the Hulk, who was honestly a bit more of a villain to be honest, managed to completely rip Wolverine in half and toss the bottom half far, far away, giving Wolverine the challenge of trying to travel with half a body to reclaim his legs. Number 7. Beast. For the longest time, I actually thought that Beast was one of the better heroes out there, and that's because I didn't know Beast, apparently. Beast is a dick. Dr. Hank McCoy is one of the 8 smartest people in the world, and being smart in comic books seems to be a pretty easy path to being morally dubious. Don't get me wrong, Wolverine isn't a Boy Scout by any stretch of the imagination, but he still holds his morals. Wolverine and Beast were actually friends. Beast stuck with Wolverine during the Schism event, and he was also on the side of the Avengers with Wolverine during the Avengers vs. X-Men. But despite that, in order to deal with external threats to the new mutant nation of Krakoa, Beast has taken a position as the chief of the intelligence agency X-Force, which has almost completely cost him his morality. McCoy has chosen some questionably authoritarian actions to guarantee the Krakoan sovereignty, like sabotaging the country of Terra Verde, squirreling away funds to open a space station prison, and interrupting one of Wolverine's resurrections to attach an obedience collar to him and send him on clandestine operations, all of which was kept secret from the rest of X-Force. This ticked off Wolverine, which in turn ticked off Beast even more. He sent Wolverine on a mission so that he would be captured for an auction that Hank attended, and then he literally showed Wolverine to the afterlife in order to resurrect Logan again in a primitive state and turn him into Weapon X. Where Beast sent him on more missions, Beast has become a literal villain, and he just keeps getting worse and worse as time goes on. Number 6. Gambit. As is usually the case between two popular characters, the Raging Cajun, Gambit, and Wolverine have each actually scored a couple wins over each other, but one of the most humiliating defeats fell squarely on Wolverine's hairy shoulders. In Uncanny X-Men number 273, the two heroes decided to face off in the Danger Room, the X-Men's training facility, so obviously they weren't out to end the other's life or anything, but the only thing on the line here was pride, and Wolverine absolutely lost some this day. Though they initially looked evenly matched, Gambit gained the upper hand by making the Danger Room conjure up Lady Deathstrike. Logan was so distracted that he didn't realize it was a trick until too late. Gambit got Wolverine with a few staff strikes before knocking Wolverine on his back and pressing his staff to his throat. This even prompted a concerned Jubilee to randomly burst into tears over Wolverine's welfare. Looking at the panel now, it's actually kind of hilarious. Number 5. Captain America. It is no secret that Captain America is the most decorated soldier in the Marvel Universe. This is owing to his enhanced abilities, but it's mostly due to his experience, guts, and heart. He and Wolverine have had their fair share of battles, with the first one as early as 1941, and Cap's usually come out on top. A large reason for Cap's ability to defeat Logan probably has to do with his discipline, as Logan tends to go berserk way too often in a fight, which leaves him prone to making a mistake his opponent can capitalize on, and that's all that Captain America is about. It is also worth noting that Captain America was the original Weapons Plus. He is basically the granddaddy to the source of half of Wolverine's power and training. We gotta imagine that Cap has got a huge advantage over old Wolvie here. He even beat the snot out of Wolverine when Cap was turned into a werewolf, picking up Wolverine and chucking him into a group of other werewolves like he was a bowling ball. Number 4. Daredevil. During the Enemy of the State storyline, Wolverine challenged a lot of superheroes. During this fight, Logan was being forced to go after Daredevil in his own home. Now Logan was really being guided to take on Daredevil in the hopes of drawing out Elektra, but the fight wasn't as easy as Logan's controllers were likely hoping it would be. Even with the surprise attack in his own home, Daredevil was quickly ready for the fight. The odds were further stacked against Daredevil because Logan had brought along over a dozen of his new friends who happened to be ninjas armed with bows and swords. Daredevil handled it just like a video game and took out the nameless goons before moving on to the big old boss. But even then, he was just looking to get through to Logan rather than just taking him down. Daredevil did have home field advantage though, obviously knowing his own home. So when he got knocked down, he knew his weight set was nearby and he just smacked Logan in the face with a dumbbell. The blow was enough to break through the mind control long enough that the fight came to an end for the time being. Number 3, The Thing. The Thing is one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe, able to stand toe-to-toe with the Hulk in battle. He and Wolverine have had their scrapes, and most of the time, Logan's been on the losing side. In one little altercation taking place in Fantastic Four 1961, issue number 374, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Professor Hulk, and Spider-Man, who had previously taken the place of the Fantastic Four temporarily, were hunting for Johnny Storm, who had accidentally destroyed part of Empire State University. This led to an altercation between the four heroes and the actual Fantastic Four. When Wolverine went to attack Susan, Ben Grimm grabbed the Canadian and slammed him into the ground, calling him an arrogant little creep. But Wolverine, in his rage, used all his might and slashed Ben across the face, famously disfiguring the character. But the Thing got his payback as he yells, "You freaking little psycho," and then he whacks Wolverine with one punch, sending him flying through not only the wall, but through the adjacent building and straight into the next one over. Number 2, Deadpool. Deadpool and Wolverine first met in 1994's Wolverine number 88. While Wolverine may be stronger, Deadpool's speed, healing factor, his skill in combat, and his absolutely buck-wild behavior has allowed him to get the drop on Wolverine multiple times and do a lot of damage many different times. In their first ever encounter, the Merc with a Mouth ambushes Wolverine while he's checking up on Garrison Kane, another Weapon X experiment. Now during the ensuing fight, Deadpool earned his reputation as one of Marvel Comics' most brutal mutants by stabbing his two swords into Wolverine's heart and lungs. Now while this typically would not phase the healing mutant, Wolverine had actually recently lost his healing factor during a bout with Magneto. Thankfully for Wolverine, his healing factor had begun to slowly return in the days leading up to this fight with Deadpool, allowing him to survive the wounds he'd suffered and win a rematch, but he did need help to do that. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Spock. There have been a few characters that have stopped Wolverine in one move, but this one really comes out of left field. In a crossover between the X-Men and Star Trek, Logan faced Mr. Spock. Faced is kind of giving Wolverine too much credit though. Upon boarding the Starship Enterprise, Wolverine moved to attack Spock, only to discover that Spock, one, not only knew who Wolverine was, but Wolverine also discovered the effects of the Vulcan nerve pinch. In literally one quick move, Spock used the nerve pinch to knock Wolverine to the ground almost instantly. It's another case of skill winning against brute strength, and that's why Wolverine needs to learn a little finesse.
First up is Wolverine vs. the Hulk. Talk about making an entrance. The Canadian superhero burst onto the scene on his home turf in issue 181 of the Incredible Hulk comic books. Wolverine was working for the Canadian federal government at the time and ended up having to jump into a fight between Hulk and the Wendigo. This was truly a clash of the titans, and the Wolverine proved to the world that he could hold his own. He ended up taking on both characters before he eventually sided with Hulk, and the pair worked together to take down Wendigo. It's nothing new for Marvel heroes to fight each other when they first meet, but this one hit a little heavier than usual. There was quite a bit of tension between Wolverine and Hulk for a very long time. There's always the feeling that neither one of them actually got over it. Whatever the case though, it was still the perfect way for Wolverine to announce his arrival and put the Hulk on notice. Up next, Wolverine tosses Deadpool. Well, we already know these two have had some wild rides together. The relationship between Wolverine and Deadpool can simply be described as complicated. Although they have fought alongside each other on numerous occasions, they've also had plenty of situations that have turned sour. Back in 2009's Hulk vs. Wolverine, the Canadian government tasked their hero with tracking down the Green Giant. The only problem was that Team X, which included Wolverine's old buddy Deadpool, managed to capture him. Although Deadpool had his usual basket of witty insults prepared, Wolverine got the last laugh when he tossed the foul-mouthed hero into a revived Hulk. To add even more insult to injury, the Green Giant then smashed Deadpool into a wall. It might not have been an electric fight on this occasion, but Wolverine definitely got the last laugh. Next up is Wolverine vs. Captain America. These two have had an up and down relationship over the years, but things really got interesting in the third issue of Avengers vs. X-Men. It's obvious that the two sides had very different opinions on certain topics, and this boiled over into a hard-fought battle over the Phoenix Force. Wolverine had informed the Avengers that Cyclops did not have good intentions for the Phoenix Force and was ready to kickstart the war. Captain America, however, was not buying what Wolverine was selling and began to have doubts about the X-Men. The two heroes eventually came to blows, and Wolverine actually did much better than most people might have assumed. He was really giving Captain America a run for his money until Giant Man stepped in and hammered Wolverine from behind. Wolverine might have lost this one, but it was only because Captain America needed some outside help to win. After that, we have Wolverine vs. Spider-Man. If you want to talk about epic showdowns, then this one is definitely near the top of the list. Wolverine and Spider-Man were both placed in Berlin during the Cold War for two very different reasons. Spider-Man was on assignment as a photographer, but Wolverine was actually trying to help a spy who also happened to be an ex-girlfriend of his. The spy wanted Wolverine to put her out of her misery, as the Germans and the Soviets were both on her tail, but Spider-Man did not want this to happen. He wanted to bring the elusive spy to justice, and this ultimately meant that he would have to fight Wolverine. The two had a spirited tilt, and although Wolverine didn't come out with W on this occasion, his tremendous skills ultimately got him exactly what he wanted. Spider-Man's rage had risen to new levels, and he'd ended up striking the spy with a lethal punch, which of course is what Wolverine set out to do in the first place. Up next is Wolverine vs. North Star. Enemy of the State was a pretty wild time in the life of Wolverine. This story saw the Canadian hero lured to Japan, where he was eliminated by Gorgon, only to be resurrected as a powerful slave of an evil ninja syndicate. He then worked as a soldier for the Hand and Hydra Alliance and attacked pretty much everyone in sight. Enemy of the State includes some memorable battles with Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, and many more. But Wolverine's biggest statement from all of these fights was his battle against his fellow Canadian, North Star. Wolverine came out of this fight as the only surviving hero, but his crazed rampage was finally put to a stop by the rest of the X-Men. Who knows how many more he could have taken down had the X-Men not intercepted him. Our next fight takes us back to Wolverine vs. Deadpool. On this occasion, Wolverine actually managed to take his acquaintance's head off with his razor-sharp claws. This all occurred in the 44th issue of Cable and Deadpool, when the foul-mouthed hero went solo to try and save Weasel from Hydra. This unfortunately meant that he was going to cross paths with Wolverine, who had been tasked with taking out the Hydra base's section commander. Of course, that commander happens to be Weasel, and the conflicting jobs ended up resulting in another fight between the two heroes. Unfortunately for Deadpool, Wolverine took a quick swipe at his frenemy's head and managed to clear it right off of his shoulders. While this would have been the end of pretty much anyone, Deadpool's special abilities only called for his head to be stuck back on his neck so he could return to normal. Next on our list is Wolverine vs. Cyclops. This was a spirited tilt that included many years of built-up rage. Now, to say things have been rocky between these two heroes over the years would be the ultimate understatement. It's no secret that Wolverine and Cyclops never saw eye to eye on many things, but it rarely ever boiled over into violence. That is until Cyclops decided to send a young mutant to eliminate a group of Hellfire Club goons. This decision sent Wolverine over the edge, as he couldn't understand why Cyclops would send such a young person to commit this terrible crime. The two exchanged verbal jabs before they finally let their fists do the talking and kicked off one of the craziest fights we've ever seen. A Sentinel eventually showed up to put a stop to this rage-filled battle, so there really was no definitive winner. The intense fight did, however, remind everybody that Wolverine meant business. Now we have Demon Wolverine vs. the X-Men. The Canadian superhero was dragged into hell on multiple occasions, but his demon-possessed fight against his X-Men buddies was one for the ages. The Red Right Hand summoned Logan to the underworld and Logan goes to hell, only for his body to be completely taken over by a demonic entity. This demon was hell-bent, pun intended, on tracking down the rest of the X-Men and eliminating them with one of their own allies. While the real Wolverine was doing his best to escape from the underworld, his possessed body took on the X-Men in a battle for the ages. Although it wasn't technically Wolverine himself, this is still one of the hero's most memorable fights. The demon made good use of the body while it was in control, and showed off the tremendous power that Wolverine is actually capable of. Now thankfully the X-Men managed to put a stop to their evil friend, but this was one battle that we will never forget. Up next is the Deadpool fight from Wolverine Origins. There is absolutely no shortage of conflicts between these guys who always seem to be brought together by fate. While Deadpool was on a mission to eliminate his old pal Wolverine, turns out there was an unexpected twist that led him to this situation. Deadpool was hilariously using all sorts of cartoon attack methods to eliminate Wolverine, such as dropping a piano on his head, but nothing seemed to work. After many tense battles and verbal tirades, the two heroes eventually got serious and discovered a little more about why they were in this situation. As it turns out, Wolverine was actually the one who hired Deadpool in the first place to eliminate himself. He did this to lure Daken out of hiding. This of course meant that Wolverine was able to use Deadpool to get the last laugh and ensure that he got exactly what he wanted. It also must have stung Deadpool pretty bad that he was unable to complete his task of eliminating Wolverine. And finally we have Wolverine vs. the Grey Hulk. Logan Logan came to blows with his longtime enemy once again for one of the most memorable fights in Marvel's history. In issue 340 of The Incredible Hulk, Wolverine decides to take matters into his own hands while Grey Hulk is on a rampage. He jumps into another battle with the Raging Giant to put an end to the Smash Fest, and both heroes really gave it everything they had. There was plenty of back and forth and lots of destruction, and Wolverine actually managed to push Grey Hulk to the brink. It probably would have been over against almost any other hero, but Hulk's healing abilities allowed him to make a comeback and get the final decision in this fight. Although Wolverine might have lost in the end, he was able to taste a bit of victory against one of his toughest opponents. This also put the Hulk on notice that his enemy was stronger than he might have originally thought.
Kicking off the list at number 10, his childhood. One of the origin stories for the twins involves them being experimented on from Loki's scepter. Another one of those origins is when they were raised by a cow. Yep, you heard me, I said a cow. Bova Ayrshire was one of the few new men who stayed behind after her creator left to go back to space. So basically, she's this evolved cow created by the High Evolutionary as one of his new men. Now these animals that are given humanoid form and a pretty smart brain to go along with as well, their purpose was to be this nurse or caretaker for other new men and the Knights of Wundagore. Then a pregnant Magda Lensher came along the Citadel after leaving her husband and had Wanda and Pietro and left them with the new nice cow lady. Now eventually Bova gave up the twins to the Maximoffs who lived down the mountain, and even Miss America and the Wizard declined the twins. So nobody wanted these poor twins. So right from the beginning, you know it's gonna be a rough one. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, could you please go down and give us a thumbs up on this video, because those likes really do us wonders for our channel. Thank you so much for the support. Now back to some Quicksilver. Number 9, genetic experiment. When they were just kids, Pietro and Wanda Maximoff also had a tragic origin in the MCU. The twins, just at age 10, were in their apartment building in Sokovia when a bomb collapsed the building. Now this was the reason their parents had passed away, and then the second shell hit, however, but it didn't explode. Rather, it left the twins to sit there and stare at it, horrified that at any second it could go off, with the word Stark on the side of the shell as well. Very important. They grew up with a different mindset towards the Avengers, and this led to them being experimented on by Baron von Strucker. This is also where their powers come from. Now this is something that is slowly coming back to light in the MCU. Now with WandaVision's ominous commercials that keep popping up, many fans have suggested that they are hints at her past traumas, and the commercial with the toaster with the blinking red light could be a reference to when the twins were waiting for the bomb to go off when they were kids. I suppose it's not very easy to forget something like that growing up. Now with the last 2 episodes just around the corner, we finally get to see what's going on in that magical mutant brainverse. Number 8, forced to join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Pietro follows his twin sister Wanda everywhere. He is extremely protective, and if she wants to join a Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, well, I guess he has to come along for the trip to make sure everything goes well. I guess. Since their first appearance in X-Men issue 4, Wanda felt like she owed Magneto because he saved their lives. But Quicksilver can't really disagree and leave her, no way. So he's like, whatever, screw it, I'll join as well. Although he makes it very clear where he stands with their ideas. They didn't do much with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, or at least Quicksilver tried not to do much. Like when Magneto wanted to nuke a country, Quicksilver steps in and opposes him. Number 7, depressed. In the Son of M storyline, Quicksilver is not having an easy go. See, he fell into a deep depression after losing his powers and his sister and his reputation all at the same time, which I'll get into a little bit later. So while walking around the city, opposed to his normal blink and you'll miss him speed, he came across some thugs. And when he tried to help out, naturally, his powers weren't there to be relied on, so he got knocked to the ground in one punch. And just then, Spider-Man comes in to save the day. He webs everybody up, and then he noticed that there was just one guy missing from the initial count. So he grabbed and webbed up Pietro as he was trying to jump off a building. Spider-Man isn't happy with him at this point either. His son is no longer alive, and he can't bury him because, well, he never existed thanks to Pietro's bright idea. So he tries to jump again off the building. This time he succeeds in hitting the ground. Now luckily he was saved, but this is just still not a great time for Pietro. Probably one of the worst times. Number 6, Age of Ultron sacrifice. When the twins were introduced in the MCU, it was during Avengers Age of Ultron, when Baron von Strucker had used Loki's scepter to experiment on the Maximoff twins, resulting in one becoming a witch and the other being super fast. Now apparently he's not as fast as we all thought, because when it came down to getting Hawkeye and the daughter of a Sokovian villager to safety, he was just a little bit too slow. He thought it was a better idea to run in front of the bullets and take them all rather than, you know, just zip them to safety. It didn't help that 1 year earlier we saw it in theaters, Evan Peters' version of Quicksilver in X-Men Days of Futures Past, and he was having a great time. He was pushing bullets out of the way with ease, he was making guards punch each other, he was trying out soup while he was doing his job. It seemed like a breeze, and he was rocking out to some music the entire time as well. But then Joss Whedon came in and decided to not make him as fast or powerful as that Quicksilver that we all kind of got used to, and then we see Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver die in just one movie, just like that. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Aaron Taylor John. Okay, and I'm out. Awesome. See you guys. Have a great set. Cheers. Number 5, Marvel zombies. If there's one thing we know now in 2021, it's that a virus can spread pretty damn fast. Hence why I'm in my closet instead of in the studio. We're trying our best here to keep clean and keep things moving, but this world makes it hard to do so because of this virus. And in a world where we're trying to slow that spread speed down at all costs, a guy like Quicksilver would be the opposite when it comes to help. So in Marvel Zombies, Quicksilver is actually part of the group sent to Earth to battle these zombies, but when he comes across Scarlet Witch in danger, he runs over to help her out, only to find out it's actually Mystique in disguise, an infected Mystique in disguise. And then it's over just like that. She bites him, turning the fastest guy in the world into a zombie. And then he uses his incredible speed to turn everybody all around the world into zombies super fast. He's actually the sole reason it became unstoppable. So let's keep that Quicksilver out of this world. Stay in 616, go, do your thing, have fun, but just don't come into this one. Don't come into 2021. We don't want that. Number 4, tried to heal mutants. So after the House of M incident, Pedro tried desperately to bring his powers back, so he snuck into the Terrigen Mist chamber in attempts to fix himself, and while he was there, he stole the pieces of Terrigen and exposed them to his daughter Luna in order to give her powers. Now Pedro thinks this is the best idea ever and that he's solved it. So he opens a clinic in Mutant Town to restore everybody's powers, and this resulted in many losing their lives due to the powers of the Terrigen Mists. And Pietro had to live with that on top of everything else that he already had to live with. The guy just can't catch a break. Number 3, too close for comfort. We go now to the Ultimate X-Men series. Okay, so since the twins were a big deal in the Brotherhood, they were very dedicated to the cause. And when it comes to the Ultimates, they got a little too dedicated to said cause. In 2001, the Ultimate pair is when things got a little weird in the comics. So one of the Ultimates front cover made readers do a double take with the duo side by side, hand in hand, with their fingers interlocked. Not even like this, like how Friends do it. It's like, you know. Yeah, the writers decided to give them a romantic relationship, you know, just to mix it up a little bit. Why not? They were always pretty close from their first issue. I mean, even Pietro told Toad that he was chewing too loud in front of his sister, so that was fine. But then it's when this came into the picture, things got weird. When Mark Miller brought them over to the Ultimates, it got a little crazy, and he was pretty defensive about Wanda to Captain America because, well, Cap was suggesting Wanda wears less revealing clothes to make an example, all because Captain America was suggesting that Wanda was a little bit scandally clad for the job. But when Quicksilver backs her up, it's more of a romantic way, which I feel like we could all have gotten without, you know, we don't want to see this version of Quicksilver, I don't think. Bring back the zombie one. I mean, anything's better than this weird thing. Even Captain America's face in that comic, he's like, oh. Now this also happened to end with Quicksilver unable to catch bullets fired at Wanda, and then one of those bullets ripped through his hand, taking out his lover slash sister. I mean, sure, that's one way to write somebody out of a relationship. Number 2, he lost his powers. When Wanda lost control of her powers during the House of M storyline, she was taken in by Magneto, who had asked Xavier for his help. So the Avengers and the X-Men met up to try and figure out a solution here. So at this meeting, they had talked about ending Wanda's life in order to ensure nobody else gets hurt or wiped out. So Quicksilver heard about this idea and ran to tell Magneto, but Magneto even thought, you know, maybe they're right. Maybe this is the best case. So Quicksilver went and convinced Wanda to use her powers in tandem with Xavier's telepathy to warp reality and create this new world where everybody is happy. This world being led by Magneto, with the twins literally being royalty. This world eventually started crumbling when Layla Miller used her powers and several heroes began remembering real life. They believed Magneto to be responsible, but they ended up tracking it down to Quicksilver and how it was his idea in the first place for Wanda to do this. So Magneto lashes out at the twin and Wanda restored reality, but this time with most of the mutants depowered, including her brother Quicksilver. And finally, number 1, dead and back again. In that House of M storyline, we see a mentally unstable Wanda Maximoff, and she created this new world where mutants are now the main bread and butter, and humans are the minority. Magneto, upon first realizing how this happened, blames Quicksilver for convincing Wanda to change reality. So he lashed out and crushes Quicksilver with the body of a sentinel. Now he did this to get back at Pietro for abusing manifesting his dream, and then Scarlet Witch showed up and quickly revived her brother. But the fact that Magneto chose to strike down his own son, I mean, that idea lasts forever, no matter which reality you're in.